Support for Carolina Business Review made possible by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries, headquartered in Hartsville since 1899. And by Business North Carolina Magazine. There's a place for those who subscribe to the theory that business doesn't have to be boring.
Well, school is out, and we start to get some real traction in the summer holiday schedule now. Beaches are beginning to get busier, and the ranks of workers thin a bit as families become and start their seasonal travel. Welcome again to the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and this time on CBR, the CEO of the Carolina's largest metro and the point of the spear, so to speak, around Charlotte's winning bid to host the 2012 Democratic National Convention. Mayor Anthony Foxx.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. And by Novant Health, a not-for-profit group of hospitals and physician clinics, ranked as one of our nation's 10 best healthcare systems, caring for patients and communities in North and South Carolina. Major funding also by King & Spalding, an international law firm with over 800 lawyers in 13 offices worldwide, providing legal services to clients in the Carolinas and throughout the world. For more information, visit www.kslaw.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded June 10th, 2011. On this week's program, Kim Price of Citizens South Bank, Patrick Mason of the Center for Carolina Living, and special guest Anthony Foxx, Mayor of Charlotte. Now, Chris William.
Welcome to our program. Kim, Pat, good to have you both here and welcome.
Thank you.
Chris.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Kim, let's start with you. Let's get to the good news because there's so many things out here to talk about. You know, when you look at communities like Gaston County, Lincoln County, Cleveland County, some of the more, I wouldn't call them rural counties, but I'd call them almost, and this is probably a term that you cringe at a little bit, but bedroom communities to places like Charlotte. When you talk to some of these counties in partnerships around more city centers, they tend to be manufacturing based, as Gaston County is, and Freightliner was and is a pretty big employer there. Cut many employees not too long ago, and lo and behold, you've got a pretty good announcement. 700 plus are being hired back. Is that accurate?
Exactly. It was a good morning.
It was a good morning.
It was a good morning to go out on the steps and open the paper and see 700 jobs at Freightliner. And it's good news for Gaston County, but it's good news for the region and the country, really. I think it's a sign that manufacturing is growing and the economy's got some steam and it's got some momentum, so it was a good morning.
You know, let me ask you that. Is that specific to a Freightliner facility in a county like Gaston, or does that portend a larger trend?
Well, Chris, I think it's a larger trend. If you think about, what Freightliner produces, which are trucks, which move goods across the country and freight across the country, it's a good sign. It means people are ordering inventory and having to move inventory and move goods, and I think that's a pretty strong signal.
Pat, same question. From this Palmetto State, what are you seeing that's good news? Because it's so easy to look at the stuff that we hear about every day that's not so good news.
Sure. Well, beyond the bonanza of a Boeing decision to come to Charleston, which is going to be healthy for the whole state, really, as a new industry unveils there. We hadn't really done a lot in the aviation thing, but starting with Vote, and then the various acquisitions that ultimately brought Boeing to the table, and their suppliers. They're talking immediate 3,800 jobs, and as many as double that when all the suppliers get lined up and we have their employees making payroll. So that's one good thing. But I think the overall Carolinas and certainly South Carolina are positioned well in the long run. We've got our costs are low. Our taxes are generally lower.
You think that's the case?
compared to where the businesses are moving from or the people are moving from, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, other, you know, we're great value. Can we maintain that value in all sectors is the question over the long run, over 25 years. Can we do that? And I think we probably can. We're starting from a lower denominator, so we can probably maintain that value. So long run, I think we're positioned pretty strongly compared to our competitive set.
I want to come back to something with you and specifically talk about in-migration. Before I do that, Kim, I want to bring it back to you. One of the things that is cheap and seems to be getting cheaper are housing prices. Still, we're looking for a bottom. You can look at the widely watched Case-Shiller index or any index in any market or any community here in the Carolinas and see that we're still trying to find a bottom, seemingly. We had the Freddie Mac's chief economist on this program not long ago, and one of the things he made a point of, and he said, yes, all those things are true, but don't forget, housing is cheap, and if it gets cheaper, that in itself will become a catalyst because people will start buying. Do you see that in the banking industry? Do you see possibly a turn in housing sometime soon?
Well, I do. A couple of factors. You're accurate about housing is cheaper, but interest rates are so low. The cost to finance housing, if you mix all that together, the housing affordable index or housing affordability index with a combination of low housing prices and low financing costs makes, you know, housing probably a pretty good buy. Now, have we found a bottom? Maybe in some pockets, you know, like politics with the mayor coming on, you know, all politics are local. Well, all real estate's local too. And there are different pockets of price points. The lower end of the market here is actually held up very well and doing very well sales-wise.
As defined how? What's the lower
Well,
end?
I'd say, you know, 150 to 300 and that 150,000 to 300,000, and that varies depending on where you are. In Gaston County, that 300 level's a different price range than it is in Charlotte. But in general, 150,000 to 300,000 is selling pretty well. Above that, it gets softer, and values in terms of price points are softer as well. I think there's been a bigger decline, you know, north of 300, at least in the markets we're in, than there has been on the lower end.
Yeah. We didn't get. We're probably not going to get a chance to talk to community banks. We're going to try to squeeze that in before we go to the mayor. I don't know, but I do want to come back to in-migration. When you heard some of Kim's comments about the cheap housing, what is that? Let me back up and ask you this, Patrick. In-migration clearly is one of the big reasons that we continue to see growth in the Carolinas. You said it's a cheaper place to live relatively, but we still have a lot of people moving to North and South Carolina, about on average annually. What is that number of the number of people that move into the Carolinas?
The best estimates that we can find are gross in numbers, combining North and South Carolina, somewhere in over 450,000 new faces, men, women, and children, all ages.
Gross, not net.
Gross in. So if you're running Bank America, you want a budget for the 450, not the net, which is much less than that, of course, so that you can sell them a mortgage or get them involved in your financial service or sell them a home if you're Syntec. So the business community focuses on the gross in number. The schools, you need to know how many 8th grade seats are in this classroom this September. That's a net number. That's fine, and that's where they need to be. But in business, we focus on the gross. So key thing about the gross number is that generally it goes up every year, may not this year, but in general over a 25-year span, it's going to go up most every year and continue going up in the Carolinas forever.
Forever. I mean, that's a broad statement, Pat.
Well, it is, but then you say the boomers are 73 or 4 million of us boomers, right? And I'm the earliest firstborn of 46, so there's 73 million behind me and you. And behind us, there's another 78 million millennials, we call them. And where are they going to want to live and raise their families and do business and bank and whatever? So we feel like, in general, because of our location and our weather and our cost factors and our smiling faces and beautiful places,
or so the state of South Carolina.
So they so well say, then we have a good positioning.
Speaking of slogans, how's that new Columbia is famously hot but surprisingly cool? How's that going?
Isn't that true?
I should know better to ask a tourism guy that question.
I was on the panel that helped make that happen, and I feel like sometimes you just have to take a position.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes sense to tell the absolute truth and put a tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if it works, and I'm still kind of hung up on your commitment to forever we're going to see that kind of growth. But thank you. We'll bring the mayor of Charlotte on in just a moment. Next week on this program, it should be an interesting conversation. Dr. Tom Ross, I say doctor, he is a JD for sure, but Dr. Tom Ross from the UNC system has gotten the job recently and has his hands full, not just cuts in education, but the 19-member campus of the UNC system is looking for another 15% cut in 2011. We'll see what he thinks of that. And then in 2 weeks, he is the chief executive officer of the South Carolina utility, Santee Cooper. Lonnie Carter will be back on this program. Earlier this year, it was with much earned fanfare and even some surprise that Charlotte announced that they would be, in fact, the host city for the 2012 Democratic National Convention. It was certainly a political coup, but also a boost to the Queen City's economic and credibility stock. And it almost goes without saying, it comes at a time with some unrest in the fortunes of the city's largest bank employers and the overall economy as well. Joining us now is Charlotte Mayor, the Honorable Anthony Foxx. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be with you.
When you heard the announcement, and I, part of the pitch committee and put together the pitch, when you really got that call, were you surprised that Charlotte won the bid?
Well, yeah, in much the same way I was surprised when my wife said yes when I asked her to marry me. I think it's one of those things that you want to have happen, but you're never sure up until the moment the announcement's actually made. So it was a great moment for our city.
450 days from now, the Queen City is going to be hosting quite an event. Mayor, this is a blood sport at the national level. Let's face it, the DNC, the RNC, any politics at that level is a blood sport. How do you make sure that Charlotte is, congenial and a southern city and kind? How do you make sure Charlotte doesn't get rolled over politically?
Well, it's been a while since the either convention has been in the South. The last time the Democratic National Convention was in the South was in 1860 down in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's been a little while, and politics have changed a little bit. But one thing you do know about politics is that there will be a fierce debate about the future of the country. And having a major political convention means that some of that debate happens on our home turf. I think the real story here is the economic story. It's the fact that this convention will bring $150 to $200 million of economic impact into our area. It's that 15,000 members of the national and international media will be here deluging our community, telling stories about our community and our region and our state that I think will help us much more into the future in terms of telling stories to future companies and future talented people about what a great place our region is.
So you expect, if I can say this, Mayor, the afterglow or the echo, the economic echo for Charlotte could go on quite a bit, and not just Charlotte, but the Piedmont. You expect that could be substantial, more so than any other convention?
I really think that there are probably 3 or 4 events you can have in your region that put you on the platform that the Charlotte region is on, and the Olympics is one. Perhaps the Super Bowl might be there in one of the major party political conventions. And the world's going to be looking at us for 4 days in September 2012. I think it's a huge opportunity for us.
Kim, question?
Mayor, schools have been in the news this week. What role, if any, do you think that city government should have in the selection of a new school superintendent? And if I could follow up a little bit and ask you, how important is the school system in Charlotte to its economic future?
Well, I think education is one of the pillars of any society. And for a society to regenerate itself and to move boldly into the future, you've got to have a good school system to work from. And I think the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system has proven that it's a very, very good school system. We will certainly miss the leadership of Dr. Gorman, who has taken the school system from a place where the level of trust wasn't as high to a place where I think broadly speaking, people felt pretty good about the things that were happening. And now there's an opportunity to provide leadership to take us to an even higher level. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'd love to consult informally with our school board and particularly our chair of our school board as they move forward. But it's really their decision, and we can only hope for someone who earns the trust of not only the business community, but all of our constituent stakeholders, including teachers and neighbors.
Just to follow up on that quickly, Mr. Mayor, does the, you know, and I want to be careful about heaping any praise on Dr. Peter Gorman. Pete Gorman did raise the bar, seemingly did raise the bar for Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Does that make it harder to find a more qualified person to take what clearly has been a contentious school year when it comes to direction and strategy and budgets? That being one thing, and Pete Gorman's credibility being another thing. Does the list get even shorter for the kind of person that Charlotte needs?
Sure, it does. You want it to get shorter. You want to have leaders in place and leaders that who've moved on to other things be people who are highly recognized, highly acclaimed, talented people. And frankly, I think the fact that Charlotte was bold enough to bring Pete Gorman in 5 years ago means that we'll be an attractive place for very talented people on that very short list of folks who can take us to the next place.
Yeah.
I was glad to hear you talk about the echo effect of the Democratic National Convention coming here, and I'm not sure if the viewers really understand that in the Carolinas, tourism is close to being the #1 industry. We spend about $30 million to promote tourism in North and South Carolina. We got about 70 million visitors coming through the states, and they often come through North and South Carolina. So this event, to bring in that many people, it impacts the tourism industry tremendously. And then there's the spinoff. And can you speak about any conversations that have happened about harnessing that spinoff? Can we get longer length of stay? Can we encourage them to come earlier and stay longer? Do we have an opportunity to ask them to come back again and have another vacation here? Or could we suggest that maybe they come and start their business here? Is there any conversation about squeezing the juice?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of juice we want to squeeze. Extending the length of stay is part of what we hope to do. If you look at other cities that have hosted conventions in the past, Boston did a run-up to the convention several days before it actually started that brought people in 3 or 4 days before the convention weekend got started. And we're looking at those models and trying to find a way to maximize. And you have to remember that for our hotel and tourism industry, Labor Day weekend is generally a very slow time in our community, and so there will be an absolute bump, but we're going to try to make that bump as big as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me follow up on that. You talk about tourism, we talk about the DNC. One of the debates going on in Charlotte right now is the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority. CEO Tim Newman and other practices that have gone on there have been questioned by City Council, by the Mayor's office, and by others, quite frankly, around payments. And I'm not going to go into details, but the question here is, Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority seems to be important to the DNA of the leadership of the DNC host committee. How important is that, and how important would it be to either confirm that leadership is the right leadership at CRVA, or find other leaders and make sure that the host committee is hitting on all cylinders as you go into next year?
Well, let me say a couple of things about that. First of all, our hospitality and tourism industry is an enormously important industry for our city's future and present. We have an opportunity in the next 15 months to really catapult our city as a destination in a way that we haven't had in the past. And I do think we've got to make sure that everything is done extremely well. And I think there's a window of time here where we've got to assess all of our assets in that sector and make some decisions about how to move forward, not only in the next 15 months, but really beyond that. And I think there have been some great things that have happened. I can think about the NRA convention that was hosted in Charlotte just a year ago that brought 72,000 people into Charlotte and went off without a hitch. Huge economic impact, and those folks went away to wherever they came from and said good things about Charlotte. So we've had some good things happen, but we've got to make sure that the leadership in that organization is ready to take us to the next place. And I think that's a healthy debate. I do think that decision needs to be made sooner rather than later.
What does this? Who sets strategy in the host committee? Who needs to be the point of the spear? Is that your office? Is that Dan Murray, the new executive director of the gang? Who is it?
Well, eventually, and when I say eventually, I mean within days, we will announce a team of advisors that we're calling a host committee, and you'll actually have names associated with that. And they will act as a group of advisors that will provide a sounding board for the staff team led by Dan Murray that will help us execute our part of the convention. Now, we have 3 jobs. We have to raise the money that the Democratic committee contract calls for, which is about $36.6 million. We have to operate and be a good partner with them over the next 15 months in carrying out the convention. And then we also have to focus a little bit on the community that we live in, and the fact that we want to leave a legacy of this convention that lives on after it's over. You will find in talking to some of the mayors in other cities that common denominator happens, which is that the things that go right, everyone takes credit for, but if something goes wrong, the mayor's office gets called. So you can count on my hand being very tightly on that wheel as we go forward in the next 15 months.
Okay.
Mayor, while our little bank is active in Charlotte and becoming more active in Charlotte, our legacy franchise is mostly centered around the 5-county region around Charlotte. And we've talked a lot about regionalism recently in the Charlotte area. With this economy like it is, we're becoming more aware of how important Charlotte's health is to our health in the surrounding communities. Are there things that we can do in the surrounding communities to help Charlotte and in turn help ourselves?
I think there are a lot of things that we can do. You know, one of the things we're realizing in Charlotte is that if the region's not healthy, we're not healthy too. I mean that from an environmental standpoint, from a transportation standpoint, from an economic development standpoint. We are in some ways not as far along in this region as some other regions. I would cite the greater Chicago area, the greater Denver area, the greater San Diego area, in terms of leveraging our power, if you will, as a region to gain things at the state level and at the federal level. I hope that over the next couple of years, we're able to develop a way of making important regional transportation decisions together. I think that is a critical development that has to happen in the public sector that will have huge economic development impacts into the future. I also think that we've got to start working a little bit more to get to know each other's regions. I had a meeting just a few months ago with some mayors within our region, and we had Doug Eccles from South Carolina come from Rock Hill, and we had Jenny Stoltz from Gastonia, and we had lots of us, no media, no staff. We just talked, and we made some agreements to continue working together to try to build an issue set that we'll work on together over the next couple of years. It's never happened, but it's very important for the people we represent to be able to have that conversation.
We have about a minute.
Yeah. You know, we talk about the funding to get the DNC to percolate in $36.6 million. How can the viewers participate in that? I mean, if you're a small company or a financial services company or even a small company like Carolina Living, what can we do? That's a lot of money. And
yeah, well, lots of things. I know we've only got a few seconds, so I'll tick off a few. Shortly, we will start to see an aggressive effort to raise that $36 million at every level, whether it's $5 at a time or $20 or $20,000 or $100,000. We want to be able to reach people and let them feel connected to this convention. The second thing is that we're going to need 10,000 volunteers before it's all over. And anyone who's interested in being connected to the convention can reach out to charlotteinTwenty12.com, and there's a place there you can actually sign up and state your preference of how to get involved.
Any in about 30 seconds, Mayor, any surprises about this process that you never expected?
Well, I'll tell you just a very brief story. I saw the president about 5 or 6 times in the course of recruiting this thing. And every time I said, Mr. President, I'm the mayor of Charlotte, Anthony Foxx, we'd love to have the convention. And by the 5th time, the president stopped me and he said, I know you want the convention. And so
Got it.
I think that was the message received.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to have you on the
You're
program.
welcome.
Come back, please. Let's keep talking about this. Pat, good to see you.
Thank you.
Kim, thanks for being on the program. Until next week, I'm Chris Woody, and we hope your weekend is good. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. And by Novant Health, a not-for-profit group of hospitals and physician clinics, ranked as one of our nation's 10 best healthcare systems, caring for patients and communities in North and South Carolina. Major funding also by King & Spalding, an international law firm with over 800 lawyers in 13 offices worldwide, providing legal services to clients in the Carolinas and throughout the world. For more information, visit www.kslaw.com. Additional funding provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. There's a place for those who subscribe to the theory that business doesn't have to be boring. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries, headquartered in Hartsville since 1899. And by viewers like you. Thank you. You may write us at Carolina Business Review, 3242 Commonwealth Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28205.